Good morning. This is Cheryll Dennis, and today is September 5th, 2023. I'm a member of the Elgin Oral History Project, and I am interviewing Mark Owen, a longtime attorney here in Elgin. So thank you for allowing me to come and listen to your stories, because you are quite a storyteller.
Well, it might depend on your questions, so let's get it going.
Okay. How long have you practiced law in Elgin? Or let's first do practice law altogether.
Well, I graduated in December of '71. I started law school in September of '67. Was drafted out of law school and spent 2 years in the Army. My wife and I got married between basic training and AIT. And so when I came back from the Army, I went to finish law school. And then I worked for the Supreme Court of Texas as a briefing attorney, which is a one-year job. It's a really wonderful opportunity for a young lawyer. And I clerked for Zollie Stately.
Who is that again?
Zollie, Z-O-L-L-I-E, Stately, who was famous for a Sunday religious program. In any case, after I got out of the Supreme Court job, I went to Corpus Christi and worked for a couple of years. And so it was after that I moved to Elgin.
So you've been here a while then?
I have, yes.
All right.
Even though Miss Carter considered me, she at the bank talked about new people. I got to be an old person, but I don't think I ever qualified as an Elginite in her mind. You had to be born here.
Yes, some people here think that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were practicing law, and then you started developing the housing development, which is called Cedar Hills. Can you tell me about how you got engaged in that?
Yes, and that occurred before I came here to practice law. My father-in-law was a developer named Lee Blocker, and Lee started, for example, Lakeway, that everybody knows that. And while I was in the Army, he and I talked back and forth about doing something entrepreneurial, me getting to, being in the Army can be a little frustrating at my age at that time.
Uh-huh.
And he owned some land out there that became Cedar Hills that I think he had purchased for like $60 an acre.
Wow.
And he and I thought, well, we'll develop that. And I really didn't know anything about Elgin, and it wasn't a real intelligent research project thinking Elgin would be a good place for a subdivision. Mm-hmm. But we started that while I was still in law school. I formed Mina Land Company, made my wife and her two sisters and their significant others, although one of them was still a teenager, so hers was in trust, members, and it was Mina Land Company that developed Cedar Hills.
Is that M-E-N-A?
M-I-N-A, which has some historical connection with the county, actually, the name.
Okay.
And we brought Bill Webster in, and I think he was from Mississippi, to be the front man. And I drifted in and out while I was working for the Supreme Court, drifted in and out when I was a lawyer in Corpus Christi. Bill was our front man. And we were selling lots for like $2,300 a piece
Wow.
in 1970, 71. And I have to say that we stuck with it, but from a developer's standpoint, Cedar Hills was not a triumph. No big problems, it just wasn't fast, and I think that's what made it such a delightful community. Mm-hmm. It's got, we put a pool, we put the pond in, first thing. I got to know O.L. Flowers and Shirley Flowers, working with them, and I really didn't have any connection with the town of Elgin during those days. I would just drive past and go to the Hicks's filling station. Do you remember when they were out on the highway?
I don't.
Well, that was, I didn't drive through town. I didn't know anybody. We were just doing the little development. But I'm really grateful for the way it worked out. You can drive through there and the houses look different, the lots are big, and people walk around. It's really nice. But I certainly can't say that I became wealthy during that period of time.
I would say it is a success still today.
I would say
it's
so.
It's a lovely place to live.
And Mena Land Company doesn't own any property out there anymore. We've sold everything. And Mena Land Company just, its existence is probably based on a place at Dead Man's Grotto, where we still own 5 acres out there on that wonderful grotto. Mm-hmm. And then just to tie up the law practice with the Cedar Hills, mm-hmm. we developed everything on Highway 95 side of the railroad tracks. And we had like 140 acres on the other side of the railroad tracks that was not in the subdivision. After 2 years of law practice in Corpus, my wife and I felt the need to move. We were in the city, and I'm a country boy, and I think that's, as I said in my book, I think that might have been the reason she originally liked me. She had maybe fascinated with a country bumpkin, having grown up in Houston.
And so where did you grow up?
I was born in Austin, moved to West Virginia in 1950. Uh-huh. And there's an interesting picture of the old family place in West Virginia.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so I was in West Virginia from second grade, and one interesting thing about my growing up is that I was always the new kid. Mm. And for example, I went to 5 different institutions, different schools, public and private, between first grade and graduating from high school.
Wow.
That makes, so being a new kid was nothing for me. New kid at the Supreme Court, my law school experience was bifurcated such that I got to be a new kid as a freshman and then kind of a new kid again when I came back 2 years later. Uh-huh. So being a new kid in Elgin was nothing really new to me in terms of being a new guy, but so we got to thinking, well, where are we going to move? And I said, well, let's move behind the tracks in Cedar Hills. And we did, and we built a house out of one of the old torn down Elgin schools.
Oh, wow.
Every piece of wood you can see in that place is from that school.
How interesting.
Uh-huh. And
Do you know what the name of that school was? Do you?
I don't,
Okay.
but others do, and I
Okay.
don't. Carl Hebb was the guy that was storing all the materials, so he might have been, so he was another guy I met early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I rented from Vernon Smith. He had the pharmacy on Main Street.
Okay.
And the pharmacy used to, well, that building went through a lot. It burned years ago and became a one-story building. But I've told this story before that they took down. I rented from Vernon for $100 a month.
Wow.
And I had a Selectric typewriter rented for $50 a month. And Rosemary Vickers came to work for us half-time. And I've had an old law school friend named Jerry Jones who joined up with me, and we opened that office and started practicing.
Wow.
I think my first case in Elgin was a lady who was a foster mother and was unhappy with her grocery bill. And I think she got overcharged maybe $60.
Which was a lot probably in that
And there
time.
wasn't much room for attorney's fees in that case.
Right, true.
But it was a tough go. Elgin really wasn't ready for a very dynamic law practice, as you can imagine. And I got called back to Corpus for a medical malpractice case, which was pretty notorious and gave us a leg up. I probably should have stayed in Corpus after that, but I want you to see something on the wall about the guys that I was up against. And there was a pretty notorious local usury case that helped get us off to a good start. And I was literally sitting on my front porch with my head in my hands when Harvey Condren called me. Do you know Harvey?
Harvey, what's his last name?
Condren, C-O-N-D-R-O-N. Harvey was a retired Exxon executive who retired on the family home off 95 North here.
Okay.
And I'd gotten to know Harvey because he was on the board of the hospital, and I was working pro bono as sort of their lawyer. And this was at the time when the hospital sold itself.
And you're talking about the Fleming Hospital?
Yes, I am. But anyway, I was sitting there with my head in my hands, and Harvey called me and said, "Mark, can you get an airplane?" And I said, "Of course." "Harvey, where are we going?" And he said, "Anahuac." And I said, "Where in the world is that?" And he said, "That's down where the Trinity River passes through it. It's in East Texas." And so we flew down there, and he introduced me to these longtime friends of his named the Eezers, E-Z-E-R, who had inherited, or who were named in a will for about 6,000 acres, a will and a trust, 6,000 acres, a bunch of cattle, a couple of oil wells, and everybody in Chambers County, aided by lawyers from Houston, was trying to take it away from them.
Wow.
And so that was a wonderfully bizarre case.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, Ernie Bogart had joined the firm, and he opened an Austin office for us, but I eventually got him to Elgin. But he and I tried that case, so like a 2-week-long case, and we won it. The Easers are still my clients, and that was like 1978, 79.
Wow.
And of course, that really helped get us off square one.
Mm-hmm.
And then in adjoining counties, there was a big oil play. And so all of us were doing oil and gas, what they call drilling opinions and division order opinions, which was you'd go to the post office and pick up a run sheet prepared by a landman, and then you'd write an opinion and then go check it at the courthouse, put it back in the mail, and then you'd get a check. It was just
wow.
wonderful.
So you said they were drilling opinions and what else?
Division order title
Division
opinions. They were
orders.
title opinions.
Okay.
But I met Ray Arbuckle, and I started doing all the real estate documents for Remington Savings. Very grateful to him. And Dr. Cardwell became a client, and he and Ernie worked together until recent years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made some lovely friendships here. And the town has really changed a lot.
I would imagine.
You
you've
had
seen-
the Simons, you had the Micklin checks, the Five and Dime, the Worthies for Western Auto, all of them on Main Street. And of course, those things all changed. And in 1984, we bought this place, and it was another move. Who's our friend?
Gus Macy?
No. Gus and I were never on the same side of anything.
Okay.
Bob Barker.
Oh, Bob Barker, my neighbor.
Yeah, Bob was being typical of other Elginites and was moving his business out on 95 North out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made me a good deal, and I bought this from him, my partners and I did. And we got the Sharp brothers who fixed it up for us. As you may know, this third floor had old coffins in it, and bodies were displayed next door in what is now the bar here,
Oh.
Liberty Tree.
Okay.
And I figured, fellas, let's fix up the upstairs, because if we don't put our law office up there, it'll never be fixed up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we did, and Ernie was married Barbara Bailey Bogart downstairs in this building.
Oh, wow.
And little things like that. Ernie and I are both retired. Jerry Jones, who started out with us, moved on to Austin years ago. And we had a couple of other people working for us, but that was the main team. And then my daughter Elizabeth joined up with us, and she's really holding down the fort now in terms of the practice of law.
Okay.
Now where are we?
Well, we've talked about your original office, and did you tell me where it was?
Yes, it was on Main Street where where Harold, next door to Harold Dildy's Western store, and right there at the corner across from the bank was where our original building, our original practice was. And my office was in a little space with flickering fluorescent lights where the kitchen was. I think Mr. Smith originally once he separated his pharmacy into two spaces because he didn't need the other space anymore. I think they had a little restaurant in there, but it must not have lasted very long.
Uh-huh.
And then he got the big bucks from me of $100 a month.
Yes, yes. Okay. So you've told me how you acquired this place and the renovation. About how long did it take to renovate?
We put it on a pretty amazing fast track. Let's see. We started, I would say 83, 84, and it was done.
Wow. Okay.
And they did a beautiful job on it. I'm really grateful. I really think about the Sharp boys every time I walk in here.
Are they still around?
They're still around, but they're not building anymore.
Okay. And did they also renovate the downstairs as well? So the upstairs and
Yeah, we
downstairs?
did a lot of things.
Okay. So then tell me how Gus Meesey, because Debbie mentioned him, how he came into your life. What was that suit about?
Well, I don't want to pick on anybody. Mr. Meesey is gone.
Mm-hmm.
He ran the Paradise Bar, and he loaned money out of there. And one of his borrowers came to me, and it was clear that he was charging usurious interest.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lawsuit over it. And it's interesting, I've heard nothing but nice things about it in subsequent years about his daughter and his family and stuff. And so consequently, I don't want to delve into it too much, but I think that was the largest civil judgment that this county had ever seen by the time that was over. And it was appealed to the Supreme Court of Texas, and it was resolved in the farmer's favor.
Good. Okay. And so were you practicing here at that time in this building?
Not in this building.
Not in this building.
Over in the other building.
Down the street.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But it was those early cases I told you about, picking up the Chambers County case, the Nueces County medical malpractice case, this usury case, and then the oil and gas practice. All of those commenced when we were in the little Smith building. And because of the success of those cases, this thinking about buying this building and spending a bunch of money fixing it up was possible. Mm-hmm. It would have been impossible back when I moved here in 74, 75.
Mm-hmm. You'd still be in that little office with the flickering lights.
Actually, I might have started doing something else for a living.
Well, that is good that you had those cases.
But we've had a pretty dynamic practice over all the years. I've negotiated with British lawyers over a case where they were pursuing American investors over real estate things. And at one point we were thinking about creating a map showing all the places that we had tried lawsuits, because we'd been all over the place. But at this point, I would say that Bastrop County has grown to the extent that my daughter, for example, has specialized in probate and estate
Okay.
law. And there wouldn't have been any way in the world she could have made a living doing that in 1975, 76 when we started.
Right.
But she had a good background. She worked for the IRS trying tax cases. And when her second maternity leave was wearing out, she came to work with us. And I hadn't tried a case in Bastrop County for years. I would like to think that was because other lawyers knew who I was, and we were smart enough to settle most cases without having to go to court. But interestingly enough, we got 2 or 3 cases where Elizabeth came in and was able to try the case second chair to me, and they were in the probate and estate will contest and things like that. And we won those, and she just grabbed the probate code, read it through and studied it, and took the exam and is a certified probate and estate planning specialist. Me, I never specialized.
But you didn't really need to, it sounds like.
Well, I gotta say that experience working for the Supreme Court, I got to see almost every kind of civil case you could imagine in the 1 year that I worked there. And it made me pretty confident talking to judges, and real confident and competent about legal research.
Right.
And it was a real leg up for me. Just in terms of feeling confident to do those things. And like, I'm going to a oil and gas conference Wednesday in Houston, just to stay on top of that.
Wow.
I was sued by a big oil company in West Virginia just a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
And that was fun. They would say to me, well, you're coming up here and telling us what oil and gas law is? And I said, yes, I am. And then when we got closer to trial, they had an expert. And guess where he was from? Texas. Yeah. And, but anyway, we settled that with a mediation. Mediation is a great part of the practice of law where both sides agree to talk and see if they can avoid the cost of trial. And I got into that early on, encouraging mediation, and that's why I didn't even try a bunch of cases in Bastrop County for a number of years, because we mediated it. And then unfortunately the courts got involved in that and would require people to mediate. And that takes the substance out of mediation. What you want is 2 parties smart enough to realize that their best interests reside in finding out the middle. And once courts started requiring mediation, it just became one more way for one side to beat up on the other one by putting it to the expense of mediation, as well as all the other pre-trial expenses that you have. But it's still a good thing.
Good. Why don't we shift gears here and talk about, you are a published writer. So how did that begin?
There's a derogatory term for people who write a book and then make sure it gets published. And so it wasn't as if I wrote something and was prompted by the public to publish it, but as you might guess, being a lawyer, I wrote a lot of stuff. I wrote trial briefs and things like that, and I always enjoyed doing it. And one early little anecdote I'll tell you about is when I was dealing with those British lawyers, I was real proud of this letter that I wrote, which was sort of like Churchillian pre-World War II stuff. We'll fight you on the beaches, we'll fight you in the countryside, we'll never give up.
Yes.
That's what I said to this British lawyer about trying to come after my client. We'll fight you on the beaches, we'll fight you here, we'll fight you there, we'll never give up. And the lawyer responded in a way, a lady lawyer, by the way, and that I was real proud of. She talked about the sheer parade of your letter. And I read that to my son, who's no dummy, and he said, "Dad, I think you need to look up parade." Because I think she was being a little facetious when she said the sheer parade of your letter. And he was right. Parade can be a wonderful Western Day celebration, a 4th of July celebration, and it can also be kind of an ostentatious show without a lot of instrumentation, bands, or anything else. But so, anyway, I always enjoyed writing, and so I just started writing my little book, Little Bill, and it's sort of a chapter book. I'd write a chapter, and then my sweet wife Miriam would look at it, and we'd chortle over it and critique it a little bit. And so then I just had a book written on legal pads. And I have to credit Miriam with, here's what the first edition of it looked like. She got a hold of an artist, and she got a hold of a bookbinder and made a really nice little book.
Very much so.
And so we bought, we had a number of hardback copies made, and they sat pretty much in boxes in my attic for a long time. But then after Mimi passed away, I got to thinking about this sequel, and I wrote the sequel to Little Bill, and my son Will and I had fun with it in sort of the same way that Miriam and I had fun with the original. And then my son-in-law Bob has published paperbacks of both, the original Little Bill and then the sequel Wingman. And my theory about writing those kind of books was, I said, well, I don't want to try and be too serious. I don't want to be subject to the same kind of criticism I got from my son on the word parade. So what I think I'll do is just write a little book for kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the star of the show was a magical goat named Little Bill, and the characters, for the most part, were crows, parrots, and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up being carrying out a little bit of my personal philosophy and stuff. And so I would like to think that grown-ups would like it, and it might be over the head of little kids. But thanks to John Wilson, the guy that did the artwork, you can at least look through at the pictures, which are pretty nice.
They are.
But it's on Amazon.
Okay.
And I think I might be, in addition to myself, I think there's only one other person that ordered a copy.
Oh.
But I've ordered a bunch of them and given them away.
Uh-huh.
But it's fun, and it's. I would like to keep doing it, but I noticed that most authors, famous authors, were a hell of a lot younger than I am when they did what they did. But that should be no impediment, because it's fun. You need to have something fun to do.
Oh, absolutely. And you were quite busy with your paint job. So you said your son found the illustrator, oh no, your wife found the illustrator?
Oh yeah. Miriam found the
And
illustrator,
how did
John
she-
Wilson, who lives in Austin. And he's done some really fun pictures. And so Wingman Little Bill was written back in 2005, I guess. And Wingman was just recently done.
Well, I look forward to reading Wingman for sure, because I enjoyed Little Bill. And perhaps that could even be good for high schoolers, because
I
to-
think
because there's so many different levels of comprehension on it and all.
I think high schoolers would benefit of reading.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of little philosophy, doing the best you can,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It'd make
not
for
just
good
for
dis-
yourself, but
Right.
for other people as well. That kind of stuff
Mhm.
runs through it. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of it was inspired by my love for my wife, Colette and Dink.
Yes. Well, I think a rich discussion could come out of these books for sure, especially, I know Little Bill, so I'm sure Wingman could too. Let's move to this house on Main Street, 1004 North Main Street. You purchased that from
The Moore family.
the Moore family, all right? And talk about the renovation and.
Okay. My daughter's house is right across the road, and we were sitting on the porch of her house and seeing that the old Moore house was in pretty bad repair. And I think that planted the seed of doing something. And I think the Moores were pretty sophisticated in the sense that one son was a lawyer, one's an electrician, insurance man, and so on. Mm-hmm. And I think they recognized it as a big problem, and they sold it to me under pretty favorable circumstances. And so cleaning it out was a big job to begin with, and there were a lot of structural problems with it. had to augment the piers underneath the house dramatically. Had to do an awful lot of stuff to the roof from the underside. Had to stabilize second floor walls by running them to the, supporting them from the ground up as opposed to just by the second floor.
Oh my.
And we've got it in a way that we're really ready to move on, but we have been, we've been static for a long time. We decided to turn loose. We had 11 guys, as many as 11 guys working on an hourly basis in the house under my son Will's supervision. And they got all this done. I mean, guys spending a day underneath the house, if you can imagine.
Oh wow.
That was, and so those guys, I give them a lot of credit for doing a lot of good work. And so the house is fundamentally and substantially strong now. But it, when we turned loose the guys, the city also came along and red flagged us for not having permits for additional parts of the work. And my son had the materials for that, but we had changed the house so much that he had to redo them.
Oh wow.
And so we've gone through that, and I think this big heat spell has slowed us down a little bit. Not really wanting to think that a poor guy has to be on the roof during those.
Right.
But we're ready to roll, and rolling will mean getting the electrical contractor, the air conditioning contractor, and the plumbing contractor in there. They'll be working on bids, and they'll be in and out of there fast, just like new construction.
Right.
But old construction, old reconstruction is not fast. And once that's done, we've done some finish work. For example, all the exposed brick in the house. You see how this is in this office?
Yes.
It isn't finished. I mean, it's just the old brick. But in the house, you can run your hand down. It just feels like a baby's bottom. And there's a lot of that. And so we've made some good progress. We've, of a finish sort. We changed it so a lot of the reconstruction in Elgin has enjoyed the benefit of not having to change things to meet code because it's grandfathered. But when one of my Cartwright neighbors walked up there, these guys are all huge, 6'7", something like that. We changed the main staircase so that a large person can walk up there
Safely.
And then we built a stairway in the rear that there always was a little stairway, but to reach the third floor, and the third floor has been opened up such that it gets natural light and everything, and it'll be a part of the house as opposed to just an attic.
Right.
But we put big new bathrooms in there, but of course we don't have them plumbed yet, but it's ready to be. But I look for it to be, I've gotten teased a lot because we've run right past my finish date. But we'll get it done this coming fall and year.
Well, it's a beautiful house, and we moved here in 2006, and so it's exciting to see it being redone.
I think
And
you'll really
in a
like it.
very safe way and all.
I'm grateful for, we've had fun with it. And my son and I have enjoyed working on it together. And at this stage of my life, if it ain't fun, I ain't interested.
There you go. That's a good attitude for sure. Does your son Will live here in Elgin?
My son lives in Austin.
Okay.
My daughter Elizabeth lives across the street, and my other daughter lives in Cedar Hills in a house that my son built that's right across the railroad tracks from my house.
Oh, that's neat. So
Yeah.
she's close by then.
You must take a ride out there. I call it my place. I call my place the shack behind the track. And this is a fair picture of it in Little Bill.
Okay. That's neat that the illustrator just portrayed your house.
Uh-huh.
Very cool. Yes, I'll have to drive out there sometime.
Yeah,
For sure.
You're welcome, for sure.
Yes. I think that is the end of my questions. So was there any other story you wanted to tell me before we turn the recorder off? Now's your chance.
That's a kind of a dangerous request. I'm full of stories.
Uh-huh.
But I think I might be, my daughter Molly gets a little irritated with me when I brag about myself.
Uh-huh.
And so I think we managed to avoid that. Here's a wonderful picture of me and Molly. It's a double exposure.
Uh-huh.
I just love that picture.
I love that. Yes. That's
But anyway,
so who is
well-
the oldest?
Elizabeth's the oldest,
Okay.
the lawyer, and then Will, and then Molly.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't want to end without, I'm invited to say something. I would want to brag on my partnership with Ernie Bogart over all these years. He and I we worked real closely together on those first cases. And then in the interest of the law firm, we both worked separately,
Mhm.
but we came together anytime it was important. And I just love the guy, and am grateful to him for the long, congenial time we've enjoyed together. And I must say the same for my longtime secretary, Rosemary Vickers.
Mhm.
I've really been fortunate over my life. Women have always taken care of me. And I've always been able to work and live in a neat environment, whether when I was growing up or when I was married to Miriam, and here at the office, Rosemary always kept things looking great.
Mhm.
And Shirley Markle, who worked for us for years. We had a real nice little team of folks. And Ernie and I are both retired.
Mhm.
I come into the office because I'm dealing with real estate stuff. At one point, we bought the title company, Bastrop Abstract Title Company.
Oh, okay.
And during the course of that ownership, we got my pal Ed Rivers involved.
Mhm.
One story about Ed is that he was in the air conditioning plumbing business with his friends, the Carters.
Okay.
And he came when I was fixing this building up to talk to me about the air conditioning and plumbing. And we were talking about how much they were going to charge me, and I said to him, well, how much do you want to make? And so that's kind of a cost plus question.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, I was impressed with young Ed's understanding this, that, and the other thing, and his intelligence and so forth. And so Bobby Jenkins and I, who were on opposite sides in that usury case, became friends.
Oh.
And he and my ultimate eventual partner, Kay Rogers, and Ernie and I bought the title company. And Bobby Jenkins' family owned it, but he came in with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, let's hire Ed Rivers. And they said, well, he doesn't know anything about the title business. And I said, well, he's smart enough to learn about the title business.
Mm-hmm.
And he has. He's been at the cutting edge for years. And what we did was we decided to buy some property because, I mean, the title company was doing fine, but it wasn't particularly remunerative to the owners.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe it'd be a smart thing to do to buy some property. So we bought the buildings that the title company operated in.
Okay.
And we fixed them up, and we owned 4 buildings on Chestnut Street. That's the street you drive into town on.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought a string of buildings on Main Street next to the Independence Title Company building, which we also bought, and we sold those. One's where we did a little of the fix-up work, and then the other people finished it up. Where the yoga center is down there.
Right.
And so we owned a bunch of buildings, and now everybody's old and we're trying to get rid of them. And we did sell 2 of them for a real nice price, considering what we paid for them. But that's been another dynamic of our little experience here in Elgin and in Bastrop. So, yeah, and I loved the friends that I met here. Harold Dildy, next door to me, and I'd go in and talk to him, and Vernon Smith, the older guys, and Dr. Cardwood, and Ray Arbuckle. Wonderful fellas. I had fun with them, going hunting and stuff.
Yeah.
My partners Jerry and Ernie did things like joining Kiwanis and doing this, that, and the other thing. And I was never much of a joiner, so that wasn't my job. And so when I started building this house and had the pleasure of getting to know Dorothy Cartwright, sitting on the porch with her while we were assessing the progress of the work, I met Debbie.
Oh.
And she made me feel like the new kid in town again.
Oh. And you've had experience at being the new kid in town.
I have.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun too.
That's neat. What a neat story. Well, I think we'll stop, and I'm going to stop the recorder here shortly, and I'm going to ask you some spellings of some of the names. So.
Okay.
You'll do your best, but I don't know for
Okay.
sure. So thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your stories with me. It's been a pleasure listening to you.
Oh, bless your heart. And I'm glad we stopped, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about a bunch of stuff in the future that doesn't get recorded.
That's true, yes.
Okay.
I love your stories.